Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today I actually want to walk you guys through implementing a customized authentication flow in Strapi, and of course the front end is going to be built with Nuxt 3. For those of us who don't know what Strapi is an open source headless content management system built with Node.js. It enables developers to create powerful and customizable APIs with ease, allowing content to be managed and delivered across different platforms. So you can actually visit the website at strapi.io to get a feel of, what Strapi offers to developers. I think the docs are great. You can click on this docs link right here, and it will give you links to the user guide documentation, which is a documentation that shows you how to use the admin UI that comes with Strapi, and then the developer documentation, which will show you how you can configure and customize Strapi. So some of the key features of Strapi are: it's a headless CMS that does not dictate how content is presented on the front end. So whether you want to display the content managed in Strapi via a Nuxt app, a Vue app, React app, a Flutter app, Strapi doesn't care about that. It just provides the content for you to display in whatever way you see fit. It has customizable content types that gives the developer the power to define their own content types and attributes. So content types are essentially tables in your database, something like that. And the attributes would represent columns in your tables. Another feature is that it provides RESTful and GraphQL APIs, so you don't have to think about, configuring those yourself. Strapi gives RESTful and GraphQL APIs out of the box. It also gives user authentication and permissions out of the box, so you don't have to go through the trouble of creating your own authentication flow and setting up permissions and all of that. It actually gives you that. Of course, today we're going to look at how we can actually customize the authentication flow that Strapi gives to us. And in particular, we're going to look at how we can, let's say, send a one-time password to the user after they log in. So they have to actually use that one-time password to get into your application. Another feature is that its modular architecture allows developers to extend its functionality with custom plugins or by installing existing ones from the Strapi marketplace. And the Strapi marketplace can be found by going to the Strapi website, hovering on this product link, and then clicking on marketplace. And we can see all of the plugins that are offered here. And plugins essentially just add some functionality to your Strapi application. So instead of having to build it out yourself, you can check to see if there's a plugin for the feature that you want and just install it and configure it and then use it in your Strapi app. Another feature is that Strapi supports various databases, including Postgres, MySQL, SQLite, and MariaDB, giving developers the flexibility to choose the database that best suits their project requirements. So, like I was saying earlier, we're going to look at customizing the authentication flow that Strapi gives to us. And what I was thinking about sharing is the solution to a problem that I had when I just started using Strapi, where Strapi gives us an API endpoint to send the user credentials to for them to log in or register, right? But I always found myself sending like an email to welcome the user from the front end side of my application. So I'd get the request back and then send another request either to a custom controller in Strapi or to an external service to say, hey, this user just registered, send an email to them and welcome them to my application. The same goes for logging in a user. It was actually more difficult for the one-time password part because that part, I just didn't have a way of sending that one-time password to block the user from actually accessing my application, because Strapi would automatically send back the JWT token and the user object once the user logs in. But I actually did some digging and found a way to, like, from the authentication flow within Strapi, to stop that JWT and the user object from coming back. Hopefully with the help of these two diagrams, I have two diagrams here, it will actually help in explaining what I'm trying to accomplish in this video. We have this diagram here where, or from our Nuxt application, the user will send a register request to Strapi. Strapi will get this request, and once the user is registered successfully, it will send an email, a welcome email, to the user's inbox. It will then, Strapi that is, send the JWT and user data back to the Nuxt application, and then the Nuxt application will send the registered user to the dashboard and that's the registration process. For the login process, I'll just zoom out a bit. It's a bit more involved. It includes, it starts at the user sending the login request from our Nuxt app to our Strapi API. Strapi then checked to see the last time that the user was logged in. And for this logic right here, we can omit it if we want to. But in this situation, let's say the user has a last logged in property on the user object, then Strapi would check to see, okay, when was the last time that this user logged in? Let's say the user logged in yesterday. We're going to say, okay, since they logged in yesterday, let's send them this one-time password. So they have to use this in order to access our application. Strapi will now send this OTP to the user's email. The user will then copy the OTP sent from the email and paste it in our Nuxt application. Now, once this is entered into our Nuxt application, we'll actually send that request back to Strapi for Strapi to verify that this one-time password is valid and that the user can now access the application. Once Strapi validates that, then it will send that success response to our Nuxt app, and then Nuxt will send the user to the dashboard. So that's what I'm going to try to accomplish in this video. Let me just jump over to our Nuxt instance in VSCode. We're going to start on the front end. So we're going to build out the UI first, and then we're going to go to Strapi and implement the logic. So we have VSCode open in our front end folder, and we're just going to go ahead and quickly create our Nuxt application. So that's done with the npx nuxt init command. And of course, it will create the files over here and ask us which package manager we want to use. So let's give that some time. There it is. We're going to choose npm and allow it to install the dependencies. All right. So once the dependencies are installed, it's asking us if we want to initialize a Git repository. We're going to say no. And then we're going to add a UI thing to the Nuxt application. For those of us who don't know, UI thing is actually a set of components, component library, if you want to call it that I created based on ShadCN UI. It's built on top of Radix View. So Radix View can be found here, and it's styled with Tailwind CSS. So in the setup part of the documentation, it actually shows us how to get started. And I'm gonna copy this command, head back to VS Code, paste it in. I'm gonna say -y to tell the CLI that I want to go with all of the default answers to the questions, and that way it won't ask me to answer each question individually. So let me just press enter, and it's gonna configure our Nuxt application and install the different dependencies. So once that's initialized, we're going to go ahead and add the components to our application as well. We can use the add command, and then I'm going to pass -a to install all of the components. You probably don't want to do this in your real world application because, you know, the size of the application and all of that. I'd recommend that you just use add and select the components that you need. But for this tutorial, I'm going to just add all of them. So it's going to go ahead, create all of the components in this UI folder, and then install the necessary dependencies. All right, so now that all of the components are added, I'm just going to go ahead and copy this component from the instructions here, because I'm going to use Sonar to display toast notifications in the application. So let me just close that, go to app.view and paste that in. Hit save. Then I want us to take a quick look at the extensions I'm using for Nuxt 3 development. So the important ones, the auto close tag, that's important. Auto rename is important as well. Let's scroll down. We want go to definition alias. This allows us to control click on an auto imported component or utility or composable, and instead of taking us to the generated declaration file, it will actually take us to the component or auto imported function itself. Cool. Next we want npm, and this will allow us to search for npm packages directly in VSCode via this little icon right here. So we can just click on it, search for a package, and install it. Next we want npm outdated. This just allows us to visit our package.json file and see what packages need updating. We then want to install the Nuxt extension. This is essential if you're going to do Nuxt 3 development. It comes with a lot of features like helping you to create the different folders that you need in your Nuxt project, help you with dependency management, IntelliSense and auto completions for different Nuxt composables and functions, and a whole lot more. We'll be using this throughout most of the Nuxt part of things, so you'll see it in action. You want prettier to ensure that your code is formatted properly. We also need this reload extension, and it has this little reload button down here, so that if you are generating new types and VS Code has not picked up on those types as yet, you can just hit that reload button and VS Code will be reloaded, and you'll start getting TypeScript help again. Let's see what's next. The Tailwind IntelliSense extension. This is needed if you're going to use Tailwind in your project. And then lastly, in terms of a needed extension, I'd say the Volar extension is needed for Nuxt 3 development as well. Now let's take a look at the Nuxt config. We can see here where by adding UI thing and adding all the components, or configuration got updated. We have these modules added. We have Tailwind CSS configured. We have the color mode module installed and configured as well. This was needed in the past if you were going to enable takeover mode, but we no longer need to do that. So I can remove this. You can see where it is adding auto import for the TV function from Tailwind variants. It's also auto importing the variant props type. You can see where it's auto importing the toast function from the Sonar package, right? And it's adding these scripts to our application for PDF make, and this is used in the data table component. Down here you can see where it's actually transpiling the view Sonar package, and this is so we don't have any issues when building our application for production. I'm gonna add two more things to this config file. I'm gonna go ahead and add a title, and I guess we can call this custom flow. Oops. And this should be in the head section, not up here. So that should be there. And then the title template is going to be whatever title we specify on the page dash custom art flow. So let's just save that. One more thing I want to do is to add the yup package to my project, and this will help us with form validation. So I'm going to go ahead and say npm I yup, and I'm going to add v validate / yup, and this package will help us to generate types when we pass a schema to our v-validate use form composable. You'll see this in action throughout the video as well. So let me clear the terminal. Do I need to do anything else in this configuration file? I don't think so. Okay, so let's just right click this area, and we're going to select this option that says Nuxt project structure. This option is coming from the Nuxt component extension, sorry, not component. And when we select it, we get to select the folders that we want to create in our application. So I'm going to go ahead and say I want middleware, I want pages, and I think that's it. If we need anything else, we'll add them as we go. So let's just click on OK, and you can see where it created the middleware folder and the pages folder along with the index.view file. Cool. Next, I want to go to app.view, and I'm going to remove the Nuxt welcome component, and I'm going to add the Nuxt loading indicator at the top. And the autocomplete provided for this component is actually coming from the Nuxt extension. And then I want to add the Nuxt page component as well. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. One more thing that I want to do is I want to go to the Radix website, and I'm going to go down to the utilities section and then config provider. At the end of this page, this documentation page, it shows us how we can actually fix some hydration issues that we may come across in our Nuxt application. So I'm going to just copy this bit. So this script section right here, and I'm going to paste it here. And then I'm going to wrap my application inside of the config provider component. So I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to wrap the whole thing inside of this config provider. And hit save, and we should be good to go. I'm just now going to go ahead and start my application to see if it's working properly. So I'm going to use nrdev. And nr is just the package manager by Anfu that's called Ni. So if you want to check that out, you can just go to github.com/Anfu collective/Ni, and you'll see the documentation here for it. Cool. So let me close that and close this and go to localhost and wait for application to boot up. So application is up in dark mode, and I'm not getting any errors or warning in the terminal, in the browser console that is, and that's a good sign. So let's just now go back to UI thing, and I'm going to, instead of coding the sign up and login pages from scratch, I'm just going to go ahead and grab a block from this website. So our index page is going to act as our sign up page, and then I'm going to create a login route so that the user can log in after signing up. I'm going to also need to create the page that will accept the one-time password. So that's 3 pages in total that we'll create. So I'm going to say, let's copy the sign up page. Let's see which one of these styles I want to use. Let's go with this one. So I'm going to copy this and go back to VSCode. Let me minimize this, and I'm going to paste that in. So I'm going to hit save, and you notice that we're getting some squigglies. And in order to fix this, we can just reload the VSCode instance. And once it's loaded back up, then the squigglies should go away. Good. So just a quick walkthrough of what's happening. Let me just show you the form again. So on our sign up page, we have this form. We can minimize that. So I have the sign up, we have the name, email, and password fields. We have this little meter down here to say if your password is good enough, and then a button to create an account with a link at the bottom for you to go to the login page. Cool. Now back in VS Code, so the title, sign up, is being displayed here, description right here. Then we have our form. We have our name input, and this is the UIV input component. We have the email input and the password input. And down here, we have the password meter, quote unquote meter, which is telling us if our password is good enough or not. Then down here, we have the button to create the account and the link to go to the login page. In our script section, we're importing object and string from Yup, and we have this infer type that's coming from Yup as well. And this infer type usually helps us to create or generate a type from our schema, right? But we don't need this because we install the vvalidate Yup package. And of course, it's going to give us this quickly down here. So let me just go ahead and remove that. And the title that's being displayed is here. The description is here. And because I'm using the same title for our SEO or page title and description, I'm passing them to the use SEO meta. This will actually set them in the title and description of our web page for search engine purposes. And then down here, we have our schema. So we're using Yup to create the schema. And in our object, we're passing in the name. And this name corresponds with this name up here. Cool. And we're just saying that it should be a string. It's required. The label for it is name. The minimum character count should be 3 and the max 50. Email, we have that corresponding to this email input up here, where we're passing in the name that we want to validate inside of this name attribute. So it's email. And we're saying that it should be a string, an email is required, and the label is email. For our password, we can see where we're passing the name password up here to this input, right? And then we're telling Yup that this should be a string, it's required, should be a minimum of 8 characters, the label is password, and we're running a test on this schema right here. So we're saying that the password should contain at least one number and a special character, right? So this is what this regular expression is doing, it's testing for. So if the password does not contain a number, a special character, and is not equal to or greater than 8 characters in length, then this will fail. Cool. Next, we have the use form composable from vvalidate. Now, this use form composable accepts a few options. If I come in the object and press Control and space, you'll see all of the options that are accepted by the composable up here. The one that we're going to use is the validation schema, and we're passing the schema to it. Now, passing the schema like this is not very helpful when we need to get the values in our function right here. If I hover over this, you can see where it's giving us a type of generic object, and we actually need it to be of this type. In order to get it to be of this type, we have to use the toType schema function, and then we're going to pass the schema to it. Now, this function is actually coming from the vvalidate / Yup package that we installed. Cool. And now if we hover over this, you can see where it has the type of name, email, and password. Cool. In here, we're displaying the success message with the Sonar composable, the toast composable that was imported. So if we go back to our Nuxt config, we can see here in our imports object where we are also importing the toast function from the view sonner package, and we're renaming it as use sonner. So throughout our application, we're going to be able to use this toast function that's exported from view sonner, and we're going to be able to use it as use sonner. So that's what's happening here. Cool. Now we're going to wrap this in a try catch. That's the first thing we want to do down here. And we're going to change the type of the error to any. And then if we have an error, we're going to display it with the sonner toast package. So let's just do that quickly. So we're going to say use sonner dot error, and it's going to say fail to create account. And then the description is going to be error dot message. So let's save that. Now up here, we actually want to create an account for our user. So we're gonna need to communicate with our Strapi API to do so. But we're gonna add a little to do right here, and we're gonna do that after implementing the logic on the Strapi side of things. Cool. So we're gonna call the API to create the account, and then we're gonna redirect the user to the dashboard. Nice. So this part, we're just gonna say use router dot go to 0, and this will essentially reload the page. Now you may be wondering, how will this send the user to the dashboard? And you'll actually see that in action soon after we add our middleware. Cool. But for now, we're just gonna reload the page once the user's account is created. So let's move on to creating the login page. So I'm gonna right click on pages, select the new page option. This option is coming from the Nuxt extension as well. So that's login index.view, and I'm gonna go back to UI thing, and I don't even need to go back to UI thing. I can just copy the style from the sign up page. So let me just copy all of this and paste it over here. Of course, I have to reload the VSCode instance. And the first thing that I'm going to do is that I'm going to remove the name input field, because we don't need a name when logging in. We need email and a password. We can keep the meter here. Let's keep the password meter here, so the user has an idea of what, to enter for their password. This message should change from already have an account to don't have an account. Create one. And of course, this is going to go to our sign up page, which is the home page in this application. So hit save. And then down here, it's going to say login. Our description should change as well. And we're not accepting a name anymore in this schema. We're only accepting email and password. And then down here, we're going to keep the use form composable to what it was. So the handle submit function is going to be pretty much the same. It's not going to say account created. It's going to say something like welcome. No, not welcome back. We're not going to welcome the user back. We're going to tell them to check their inbox. So we're going to say, please check your email. And we're going to change this message a bit. So we sent a one-time password to your email. Cool. So instead of reloading the page here, what we actually want to do is we want to redirect to one-time password page. Cool. So we're going to save that. And if an error is sent back from our API, we want to say that, failed to log in, and then show that error message to the user. Now, for our one-time password page, let's just go ahead and duplicate this page right here. So I'm going to right click, come down to the duplicate file or directory option at the end. And if you don't have this option, just go to extensions and search for duplicate action. So this one right here is the one that I'm using. So I right click, login, click on duplicate file or directory, and I'm going to call this OTP. So now on the OTP page, let's just reload this. We are going to remove this password field. We're going to remove the meter as well. Let's hit save. And I think I actually want to look at this page while editing it. Let's change the title to one-time password. And it's just going to be the description of enter the one-time password sent to your email. That's fine. Down here, let's remove this for now. And we just want the OTP property here. It should be a string. It's not going to be an email. It's required. We're going to call it OTP. And let's save that for now. I'm going to remove this. It's not being used anymore. The meta from use form. And we're going to send the call to the OTP endpoint. And then we're going to redirect to the dashboard. Cool. And that redirection is going to be handled like this. Use router dot go, and we're going to pass in 0. So this is going to reload the page. Nice. So instead of telling the user to check their email here, we're going to welcome them back to the application. So we're going to say welcome back. Change this message as well. Save that. And then we're going to say invalid credentials down here if we get an error, and then display that error message. Cool. So let's just go back to Chrome and navigate to the one-time password page via the DevTools, because currently I don't have a way to get there via a link that's on the page. So I'm going to open the DevTools, click get started. I'm going to go to the pages tab. Let me go ahead and update the settings first. So I'm going to expand the sidebar and close when I'm clicking outside. Good. So open that, click on pages, and then I'm going to select OTP. So this is saying one-time password. Enter the one-time password sent to your email. Nice. This should not be saying email. This should be saying one-time password. And then this should be saying verify or something like that. Cool. And this link, I'm not sure if a link should be here. I'm not sure if a link should be here. I'm going to remove this link. So back to VSCode, we can on the one-time password page, we can either remove it or allow the user to go back to the login page. You can say go back to login page. Cool. And that's just going to go back to login. Hit save. Like I said, this should be verify OTP. And here, what I want is a label that says one-time password. Type is not going to be email, and the name is going to be OTP. So let me remove this placeholder as well. And there's actually a pin input component that we could use. I'm not going to use it in this tutorial, but I think if I go UI v pin input, we can actually use this pin input as well. The thing is, I'm just going to send a UUID as the one-time password instead of trying to create like a unique 6-digit code type of thing. But you can definitely do that in your application if you want to. Cool. So let me just remove this, save that, take a look at this again. So we have one-time password. Let me remove this from the title. It's too long. Shorten this as well. One-time password, enter the one-time password, then the input for it, and then verify. Go back to login page. Nice. So if you don't have an account, you want to create one. So this should actually be going to the home page, which it is. And this should be going to the login page, which it is not. So back in VS Code or index page should be able to send the user to the login page. So save that. Check it again. Login, create one. All right, nice. Nice. So the UI is pretty much in place. I think we can actually go over to creating our Strapi application now and doing the customization there for our user to get those emails and, you know, send over back the correct information. So let's just go to our Strapi VS Code instance. So we're now in the backend folder and it's opened in VS Code. And we're going to just use the create command from the Strapi website to create our application. So I'm going to copy the command right here. I'm going to paste that in and create the Strapi application. Now the CLI will ask us if we want to use the quick start method or the custom method. I'm going to go with quick start for now. And it's going to create the files and then proceed to install the dependencies with Yarn. I'm going to stop it right there because I actually want to use npm as my package manager. I'm going to say npm install. I'm going to use npm and allow that to install the different dependencies. Now, once the dependencies are installed, let's just open our package.json file. And I'm going to go ahead and update the Better SQLite 3 package. And I'm going to update the version number for React and React DOM. And these two, you have to actually leave them at this version. If you try to update them past this with this current version of Strapi, then you'll have some peer dependency errors and you may not be able to start your application. Next, I'm going to change the develop command to dev. So I can just say npm run dev. And I'm going to go ahead and start my application now. So I'm going to say nrdev and allow that to boot up. Now, once the application gets started, it's going to check to see if I have an admin user. And since I don't have an admin user because I'm creating the application for the first time, it's going to open the browser on a page that allows me to enter the credentials for my initial admin user. But you'll see that in just a sec. So my application is up and running now. And you can see here in the logs where it's saying, you know, actions available. One more thing. Create your first administrator by going to the administration panel at this URL, right? So it actually automatically opens that URL for you. So let me just go ahead and autocomplete all of this and click on get started. So our Strapi application is up and running. And if you are not aware of, what Strapi is or how it works or what these different links are, you can definitely check out the last video that I did. I went into more details about the different areas and, what you can do in each area and all that good stuff. Now, before I start customizing the application, I'm going to go ahead and install the node mailer provider from Strapi. So I'm going to come to the Strapi website and head to the marketplace, and I'm going to search for node mailer. Yeah, and node mailer will actually just help us with sending emails from our Strapi application easily. So we can just come down to the installation section right here, and since I'm using npm, I'm going to copy this command, go back to the Strapi terminal. I'm going to stop the application, paste that installation command in, and then I'm going to go back to the browser, and it's showing us how we can actually configure the node mailer, the email provider for Strapi. So here it's telling us that we can actually add this to our plugins.js file that's in the config folder. So just copy this thing, and I'm going to go back to Strapi right here. I'm going to go to config, plugins, and I'm going to paste this in. Now, of course, we're going to get some errors. I don't know why it's not giving us an error here, but we need to extract this env function from up here in the function that's exported. All right. Now, once we extract that, of course, we'll need to add some environment variables to our application. Now, this configuration is important in production. You need the SMTP host, port, the email and password to log into that email so you can actually send the emails properly. But during development, there's actually a way to spin up like a local email client with a package called maildev, so you can actually catch your emails locally and view them in the browser. And that example is actually displayed here, where it's saying that for development mode, you can just create a new plugins.js file inside of the env development folder that's inside a config, and then just add this bit to it. Now, this syntax may be new to some of us, but Strapi actually allows us to configure, to add configuration to the project for different environments via this syntax. And the documentation on that is actually here. So if you go to docs, developer documentation, configuration, and we come down to environment variables, we can then click on this environment configuration, and it will tell us all about this. So it's saying that configurations can be created with the following naming and structure conventions: config folder, env, the name of the environment, so production, development, staging, and then the configuration file that you want to override for that environment. Cool. This is useful when you need specific static configurations for specific environments, and using environment variables is not the best solution. Cool. So in our case, instead of adding the email configuration to just this plugins file, we're going to create this one specific for development. All right. So I'm going to right click here, create a new file, paste that file path in. And now, once I'm in development mode, anything that I specify in this plugins file is going to take precedence over the one specified here. All right. So if I come here, I can just copy from the documentation this bit, and then I can paste that in. And now for development, the email plugin from Strapi will actually use this configuration to send emails. Now, the package that I'm going to be using just to catch those emails is actually called maildev. And if you go to maildev on GitHub, you can actually see how you can quickly, spin up an instance, whether it be in Docker, or you can just use the npx to start an instance. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to say in my Strapi application, I'm going to add a script, right? And this script is going to say maildev. And it's going to be npx maildev. And I'm going to hit save. Now, when I run the script, let's see what happens. So as you can see, maildev creates this temporary folder and it will store your emails there. It's saying where it's running the web app at this location, and the SMT server is actually running here. Cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually test this. So if I control click here and open, we get nothing, right? So I'm going to actually change this to localhost. And then this is our email interface for development. Cool. I'm going to test to see if this is working properly. So I'm going to start up my Strapi application in this terminal. So I'm going to say nrdev again. And once that's up and running again, I'm going to go back to the browser, reload this page, and then I'm going to send a test email. Now to send a test email, you just come down to settings, come to the email configuration, and just put in an email address, send that test, and you can see where the email is showing up here. So this part is working. The emails are sending out. That's configured properly. Now, what we want to do next is we want to configure the user. Remember that I said that we're going to use a last login property to check to see when was the last time that user logged in. And if that's null or it's a date in the past a certain number of days, then we're going to send the one-time password to the user. Cool. So we're going to come to our content type builder here, and we're going to modify this user table. So let's add two new fields. The first one is going to be a date field, and it's going to say last logged in. This is going to be a date time field, and it's not required, so we don't need to customize it. We're going to add another field. This one is going to be the one-time password, so it's going to be OTP. And we're going to hit finish. And then we're going to save. Now, we have the two fields that we want to check when we're customizing the different endpoints. So we're going to actually move to the code now, and we're going to customize Strapi from the backend. So now if we come to source in our Strapi app and we come down to this extensions folder, you will see that a user's permissions folder has been created. Now this will not be here by default. Cool. If we did not add those two custom fields, then this folder would not be here. So if you're not going to add custom fields to your user and you just want to extend the authentication flow, what you would need to do is you need to create this extensions folder and then create this users permissions folder within it, right? Now, inside of the users permissions folder, what we want to do in order to extend the user, to extend this plugin, sorry, because this is the name of the plugin that we're actually extending. This plugin is provided by Strapi, and you can actually view that by opening your node modules folder, scroll down to Strapi, where's Strapi? So at Strapi, and then you can see these are all of the plugins that Strapi provides. So plugin cloud, this one, plugin email, plugin users permissions, and this is the one that we're actually going to customize. Cool. So inside of this folder, we actually want to create a file, and the name of this file is strapi-server.js. Cool. So let me just stop my application. And while I'm going through this, let me just bring up the documentation on how to extend a plugin. So if we come to the Strapi docs, we can scroll down to the plugins section right here. And then you can see the using plugins section and developing plugins section. So we're going to expand the developing plugins section, and we're going to go to plugins extension. Cool. Now, the part of the documentation that we're actually interested in is this part, extending the plugin within the extensions folder. So the instructions are saying that you should create the extensions folder in source, which we have that right here already, this extensions folder under source. It's then saying that you need to create a subfolder with the same name as the plugin to be extended, right? Now, the name of this plugin, if you go to the node modules again, expand Strapi, you can see where it starts with plugin dash. Do not include this part. Cool. So the name is users dash permissions, not plugin dash users dash permissions. All right. So in extensions, we create the name of the plugin. It's users dash permissions. And now inside of this users dash permissions folder, we're going to create a file. And the name of that file is strapi dash server.js or TS if you're using TypeScript or JavaScript with Strapi. We're using JavaScript, so I'm going to right click on this folder, create a new file, paste in the file name, and add JS to it. Cool. Now, inside of this file is where we want to actually customize the authentication part of our Strapi app. So now this code snippet is actually showing how we can actually extend the plugin. So we're going to go ahead and copy this, come back over here, paste that in. And one thing to remember is you have to return this plugin value that's given to you in this function, right? So you can add custom routes, which we will be adding a custom route. You can add a policy, and you can, of course, add a custom controller. Cool. So we are actually trying to override both the register and login endpoints. Cool. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to store the original register and login function that's provided by the plugin in a variable. How do you do that? We can come here and say const original register, and we're going to set that to the plugins register service. Cool. So if you want to know if this even exists, so we're going to go to node modules. We're going to come down to the Strapi folder. We're going to go to plugin users permissions, server, and then we're going to go to the controllers, right? So we're not actually going to override a service. We're going to override the auth controller. Now, the function that we want to get or store from the auth controller is the callback, because this is the one that's used for login, and the register. Where's the register function? This one. Cool. So it's going to be plugin dot controllers dot auth dot register. Cool. And then we're going to do the same for the login function. So we're going to say const original auth login, and the name of this is not actually login, it's called callback. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and click save right there. And what we want to do is we want to implement our own version of these two functions. So starting with the registration one, we're going to say plugin.controllers.auth.register is equal to an asynchronous function that's going to get the context as the first argument. And the first thing that I want to do in this function is to call the original registration method. Yeah. So I'm going to say await original auth register and pass the context to it. Right. Now, what this will do is this will actually call this function right here and perform all of this action. So everything within this register function will be executed, and we don't have to worry about re-implementing this entire logic, right? Now, at the end of this thing, you can actually see where if the user was registered successfully, then Strapi will actually return via the context. It will send the JWT and the sanitized user back in the response to the client. Now, what we actually want to do is to send a welcome email after the person registers in our application. So here we're going to say send welcome email, right? And the documentation for sending an email programmatically can be found under the using plugins section and the email plugin. So here it actually shows a snippet of what we can actually do to send an email from in our code. So I'm going to copy this right here. I'm going to go back to the Strapi instance, and I'm going to send the email right here. We don't have to await this, right? We're not going to stop the response from going out if this email isn't sent off properly. Let's just go ahead and save that. So we're going to call on the Strapi email plugin. We're going to get the email service and then call the send function from the service. Now, the object that we want to pass to this email, as you can see right here, we want the from the response that's been sent, we want to actually get the user's email and put it right here. So it's going to be ctx dot response dot user dot email. I think that's the correct object. I may be wrong, maybe something else should be here, but when we test it out, we'll definitely see if this is working. So it's the response user dot email, I think, but let's see. And we can set the from email. Usually you set this in your environment variable, but for now we're just going to say some app at noreply.com, just for testing. We're not going to CC or BCC anyone on this email. We can set the reply to be the same as this one right here. The subject, you can set this how you see fit. Welcome to our app is fine. And we're just going to say something simple like welcome to our app for the text version of the email. And then for the HTML, we're going to put welcome to our app in an H1 tag. So let's save that. And with this in place, we can actually test out the register part of our application. So let me just go ahead and start the Strapi application again. So our app is up and running again. Let me just go to the admin UI, refresh. Good, no errors. And now we're going to go back to our Nuxt app, right? So let me just close this and this. And just so we don't have to do the communication between Nuxt and Strapi manually, we're going to add this plugin. It's called Nuxt Strapi right here. And it's a module, right? So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add this module to our Nuxt application with this command. So we're going to copy it. We're going to come back to the Nuxt instance of our app. We're going to stop our app from running, paste that command in, and allow it to add the Strapi module to our Nuxt application. So now that that's finished running, we can check our Nuxt config and we'll see where the Nuxt.js Strapi module has been added. What we want to do now is to configure the module to communicate with our Strapi app. So we're going to come here and I should be getting some TypeScript help, but I'm not seeing where that's been done. So I'm going to go ahead and generate the types for my Nuxt application. I'm going to run the Nuxt prepare command. So let's just run that and it will generate the types in the .nuxt folder. So once that's done, this error should go away and then we'll get some TypeScript help. So we can come into this object, press Ctrl and spacebar, and we can see the options that are here. So I want to change the cookie options for the logged in user. I'm gonna set the max date to 30 days. So whenever my user registers or logs in, then they'll be logged in for 30 days until they explicitly log out. Another thing is I'm going to set the name of the cookie and just some random name XYZ. It's fine for this tutorial. I also, if I wanted to populate any relation on the authenticated user, I can do so via this auth object. So I can pass the populate value here. And let's say I want to populate the role. Cool. Now, in order for this population to work, you have to remember to allow the find and find many for the role on the authenticated user in your Strapi app. And you can do that by coming to the admin UI, go into settings, come down to the roles link under users and permissions plugin, go to authenticated and expand the users permissions drop down and just allow under the role section the find and find one. Cool. You can go ahead and save that. And now when our user is logged in, they'll be able to find and find one to call these two endpoints for their role. Cool. Let's see, what else do we need to configure? Do we need to configure anything else? Nope. The URL. So the URL for your Strapi backend, you usually store this in a .env file. So we can create a .env file here. And the value that it will actually check for automatically will be this environment variable. Cool. So Strapi underscore URL. and I'm going to set it to http :/127.0.0.1 at port 1337, and this is where my Strapi backend resides. So here I'm going to say process.env.the URL and hit save. And now we can actually start communicating with our Strapi app from within our Nuxt project. So I'm going to go ahead and start up my project again. And once that's up and running, I'm going to go to the register page, which is this one right here. Let me close these other tabs. And then here, I'm going to add the functionality to register my user. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to say await. And the Strapi Nuxt module provides a composable that's called use Strapi auth, right? And this composable provides a few functions that we can actually call. The one that I'm going to be working with is register, and we're going to pass some values to register. First one is the username, and that's going to be values.name. The second is email, which is values.email. And the third is password. Now, if you have other custom values that you want to send to the API when registering your user, you can also add them here, but we're not going to do that now. Cool. So we're going to go ahead and hit save. And down here, you can see where after, let me just remove this to do. So after the user registers, we should be reloading the page. So let me move this below the toast. And this reload will not actually work just yet because our middleware has not been created and registered to this page. Cool. So we're going to go ahead and create a new middleware, and we're going to call it auth. And this middleware is going to be asynchronous. And here we just want to check if the user is logged in or not. So if the user is logged in, we're going to send them to the dashboard page. And if they are not logged in, we're going to kick them off of this page. Or we probably create a separate middleware for kicking them out of the pages that they're not supposed to see when they're not logged in. So let's use this one to kick them out, right? So we're gonna get the logged in Strapi user, and this logged in user comes from another composable provided by the Strapi module for Nuxt that's called use Strapi user. Cool. Now this value is a ref, so it's reactive, which is great. And here we're just going to say if not user.value, we're just going to return navigate to our home page, or we can go to login. That's better. Cool. So this middleware is just saying, okay, if this user is not logged in, redirect them to the login page. We probably want to replace the route as well. Nice. So we're going to create another middleware, and it's going to be called already logged in. Yeah. So this one is going to be similar, where if the user does exist, so if this value is true, then we want to redirect them to our dashboard. Oops. So we're going to register this already logged in on the authentication pages, and then our dashboard page is going to have this auth middleware on it. Cool. So let's implement that right here. So on our register page, we're going to say define page meta, and we want to pass a middleware to this page. Now you can pass multiple middlewares with the array syntax, but since we're just going to be passing one, we're going to just pass it as a string. So the one that we want to register here is already logged in. And because we added a new middleware, we have to restart the server. So we're going to restart our application like that. And now, because we want to redirect to the dashboard page, we have to actually create that page. So I'm going to right click on pages, new page, and add dashboard. On this page, nothing fancy, just probably a welcome message and probably a button to log the user out. So we're going to say UI button. Of course, we're not getting any help because we need to reload VSCode. So once VSCode is up again, should be able to do UI button. Yep. And this will say logout. So let me just save that, add some style to this. That should be good. Let's add a container here. Nice. Now for the logout functionality, we're just gonna to the click add this logout function, and then down here we're gonna say logout is going to be, we're gonna call the logout method that's provided by the use Strapi art composable. So we're gonna say use Strapi auth logout, and then after calling this function, we're going to say use router.go, and this is going to reload the page, right? Now reloading the page by itself will not work, so of course we have to come up here and call the define page meta macro and register or auth middleware. So with this on the page, reloading it while not logged in will actually just kick the user out to the login page. Cool. So that's our dashboard page. So now we are going to try this out. So we're going to go to our browser, page is going to reload, and then let's open our dev tool, and we're going to say let's register as John Doe at test.com and a password. So the password should be at least 8 characters. It should have at least one number and a special character. So that's good. And we're going to say create account right here. So let's just hit this. And we got an internal server error. So something went wrong in our Strapi application. So let's see what it is. So it's saying that I cannot read properties of undefined. Reading email. So ctx.response is not the correct syntax. I figured as much. So I'm just going to go ahead and log ctx.response to see what is sent back from after this function is called. So let me just go ahead and save that. And this should be restarting our application. It is restarted. And of course, we can't sign up with the same username again. So let's say Sally Doe, because even though that error was thrown, because we called the register function before, the registration was actually successful. Yeah. And now that we actually got that error, we should always remember to add these things inside of our try catch block, right? And then down here, we can say ctx dot bad requests and just send back this error. Yeah. So let's save that. And for our application here, like I said, we can't use the same username and email. So we're going to say Sally Doe at test. And let's look at the network tab. Create that account. And now you can see where it actually redirected us to the dashboard. The user got created. And to check on this created user, we can just open our Nuxt DevTools, come down to payload, and you can see where if you expand the Strapi user, we have that created user right here. Cool. Now I'm going to go ahead and log out, and you can see that the logout functionality is working. And if I try to go back to that page, it won't let me. So I click the back button. It's not going back to that page. If I try to go there manually, it just sends me back to the login page, and that's the middleware at work. Cool. Now, the issue on the backend. So, after login ctx response, this is what we have. So apparently, the email is stored in the body object. So this is what we did wrong here. So let me just uncomment this, and I want ctx.response.body.user.email. Nice. So let me just, did I remove the log? Nope. Let me remove this log. We don't need this log. Restart the server. And I'm going to go ahead and from the UI, remove the two users that I just created. Close that for now. And now let's try to create an account again. Let's go with John Doe. John Doe at test. And the password is 123456789 at. And now, if we should create an account, we can see where we're logged in and our email is sent, and it's saying, welcome to our app. So that's the registration part covered. So if you want to override the registration part of the, login flow, this is how you do it. And also, if you don't want to send the response that's sent from this original register function, you can always say something like ctx.send and pass in your own custom object to send back to the client. What this will do is it will actually alter the information that's sent back via this same function from this original registration function and use this one instead because it's called after this. Cool. So if you don't want to send back the credentials automatically to the user, you can always override this, and we'll look at that in overriding this auth login function. Cool. So now that we can register and our user is getting that email, let's move on to doing the same for the login part, right? So they can actually register. That's good. Now we want to be able to send the one-time password whenever they're trying to log in. Yeah. So on the backend, what we're going to do is we are going to implement our own callback function. So let me just minimize this. So the callback function is what Strapi uses to log a user in. So we're going to come up here. We're going to minimize this one too. And we're going to say plugin dot controllers dot auth dot callback is going to be equal to an asynchronous function that gets the context as the first argument. And then in here, of course, we're going to try catch. We're not going to make that mistake again. And up here, we're going to await the original login function. Cool. So after the user is logged in, so let's go back to the callback function. You can see where Strapi is sending back the token and the sanitized user back to the client. Yeah. No, we don't want to do that. What we actually want to do is we want to generate the one-time password and send that to the user's email and then allow them to use that to log in. Cool. So now we're going to install the UUID package. So I'm going to search for UUID here. I'm going to install that. So it's been installed. And then up here, I'm going to bring it in. Okay, my snippets aren't working. Const before as UUID4 from UUID. And then I'm going to come here and say const OTP is equal to UUID. So this is going to generate a UUID for us. And then we are going to update the user's one-time password. And we're going to do this update with the entity service. So if we come to the Strapi documentation and scroll down to the entity service API section, we're going to click on the CRUD operations documentation. And here we'll actually see how we can update a specific record. So we're going to copy this, come back to our backend, and we're going to paste that in. So we're going to say await strapi.entityService.update, and we're going to pass the UID for our user's permission plugin right here. So it's going to be plugin : users permissions.user, and the ID is going to be the ID that's been sent back. So it's ctx.response.body.user.id. And the data that we're trying to update is the one-time password. Yeah. So let me put a comma here, get rid of this error. So doing this will update the user with this one-time password. Now we also have the last login to check for. All right. So what we want to do before sending the email and even before updating this value, we actually want to check to see if the user has logged in any at all. So if that's null, then we want to send the email and update this OTP. And to help us with this, we are going to install the day.js package. So we're going to search for day.js over here, install that. Then I'm going to bring it in up here. Cool. Now here is where I'm going to check when the user last log in, right? So I'm going to say, let's should send email. I'm going to set that to false. And then I'm going to say if not ctx.response.body.user.last login. So last logged in, I think that's what it's called. Let me double check the schema to make sure I'm not making that mistake. So the property is called last logged in. Okay. So if the user's last login is false, then we're going to set this should send email to true, right? We're also going to check if the last time that they logged in is greater than a day. So I'm going to say check if the last login date exists and is greater than 1 day. So if ctx.response.body.user.last logged in, so let's close that right here. So we're going to say the last login date is this date and now is this date, right? Then we're going to say the difference is going to be no, and we're going to call the diff function on DJS. You can see a little bit of the documentation here, and we're going to see if the difference between, we're going to try to find the difference between the last login date and no, and we're going to check by days. Cool. And then we're going to say if the difference is greater than or equal to a day, then we're going to set should send email to true. All right. Now we're going to say that if should send email is true, then we want to execute these steps. So we're going to generate that one-time password and update the user with it. And then we're going to send the email. So in sending the email, we're just going to copy the function that we have up here. Then we're going to paste it down here. We want to send the email to this email address, right? Because that's coming back from the callback response in this object right here. And then for the body and subject, we're going to actually change this. We're going to say your one-time password is, and attach the OTP. We're going to do the same thing for the text. And the same thing for the HTML. Cool. Now, once the email is sent, we want to update the last login field. Well, no, let's not update it here. Let's actually update it when the user logs in. So now we're going to say ctx.send and send this message to the client. Now remember earlier I said that if you want to override whatever is sent here, all you have to do is call this function again after it's called for the original login. So this will send the response back to the user like this with the JWT and user. But here we actually want to send this over to our front end. All right. So what we're going to do is alter this object that's sent over, because our front end is actually expecting, if I should go to, let me go to the Strapi Nuxt module documentation. If I go to the GitHub repo, I can actually show you what happens after the user signs in. So when we call the login function that's provided by this module, let's see, use Strapi auth, we want login. So what happens is it's expecting the JWT right? And it's expecting the object to come over like this, and then it's gonna try to fetch the user, and then it's going to return this. So this is what this login function is going to do. We have one or two options here. We can try to send back a response that will mimic this or mimic what this is looking for, or we can just use the use client composable that the module provides and do the auth request ourselves, which is what I think we should do. Yeah, let's do that. So we don't need to actually override this anymore. We can send it as is. So let's hit save. And then we are going to go to our Nuxt code. And in here, where is it? Our login page. We are going to send the call to our API. So, and then to the client, I'm going to pass the URL, which is going to be auth/local. And then as the second parameter, I'm going to pass the method, which is a post, and the body. And this body is actually expecting an identifier. And this is going to be our email, and it's expecting a password. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And then now once the user sends this login request, we're going to redirect them to the OTP page. So let's go return, await, navigate to OTP. Cool. So let me just bring this above the return and hit save. And our application is still running. So let's just go to the browser and see what happens. So let me reload this page for good measure. And I don't remember the email that I used. Let me double check over here. Okay. So it's johndoe@test.com. We're going to paste that in, enter our password. And this should not say create account. This should say log in. Well, let's just press that. And you can see here where it redirects us to our one-time password page. It shows the toast notification, and the response from our API is this message. And of course, you can see up here where we got the notification, and it's giving us our one-time password. Yeah, good. So now we actually want to enter this one-time password here. And then once this is okay, meaning the API will check to see if this one-time password is valid, we're going to actually log the user in. Cool. So back to the API, we are now going to, let me minimize this, add a custom route. Now, adding a custom route can be done like this. So this, what you're seeing up here, is how you would add a custom route. So it's plugin.routes and then the content API key .routes, and then we're going to push our route object on to this route. Now, to verify, we're going to send a post request, and the route is going to be auth/OTP. And the controller that's going to be handling this is going to be called, it's going to be one of the auth controllers, and I'm going to name it OTP as well. Yeah. Now let's create this controller up here. So I'm going to say plugin.controllers.auth.otp, and it's going to be equal to this asynchronous function that receives the context as the first param, as the first argument. So in here, we're going to try catch, of course, ctx.return return whatever that error is. And then we are going to say that up here, we're going to get the one-time password from the request body, and we're going to find the user based on that one-time password. Now, if the user doesn't exist, we just return an invalid credentials response to the client. And if the user does exist, we are going to create a JWT for that user and send the JWT to the client. Cool. So up here, we just want to say const OTP. We're not going to get the email. For more security though, you could get the email from the client as well. You know, it would make searching for the account easier and less error prone. But for now, we're just going to get the OTP from ctx.request.body. And if this one-time password is not in the request body, we're going to return ctx.body request. OTP is required. Then we're going to find the user based on OTP. So we're going to say const user equal to await. And of course, we can go back to the Strapi docs to see how we perform a find one. And the find one here for the entity service won't work for us because this actually requires the user's ID and we don't have that. So we're going to go down to the query engine, to the single operations, and to the find one part of this one. So this is what we actually need because this one does not require an ID. We can actually find one by a specific attribute. So back to our backend, we're going to paste that in. So const user is equal to await strapi.db.query, and we're querying the user's permission plugin. So we're going to say plugin : users dash permissions dot user, and we're going to say that we want to find one where the one-time password is equal to the one-time password that was sent over. Now, if we don't find this user, so we're just gonna send back invalid credentials. Cool. But if we do find the user, what we actually want to do is we want to clear that one-time password from their record, set their last login value, and create that JWT and send it back to the client. So if the user is found, then we're gonna create a JWT, and that's done by calling the user's permissions JWT service and then calling the issue function on it. And you can actually find that if you come back to node modules and we come down to Strapi and then to the user's permission plugin. If we go to services, not server, well, server, then services, not controllers, we can see where we have a JWT service. And this JWT service is exporting the issue function. Yeah. So it requires a payload and any JWT option that you want to pass. Cool. So the payload is the user ID. So that's what we're sending. That's what we're signing. And then we are going to, let's see, do we have to pass the ID or? Yeah, so we can pass any object. That's fine. So now that the token is created, we're going to update the last login and the one-time password. So we're going to say strapi.entityService.update, and we're updating in this plugin. the user's ID because we found the user, right? This is assuming that the user exists. So we're going to get the user ID, and then we're going to set the last login to whatever date time it is now, and then set the one-time password to null. Cool. Now, once that's done, we want to just send back the JWT to the front end. Cool. So the last part that will actually make this controller and route work together is setting the config. So in here, I want to say that I don't want this route to be prefixed with anything. The only thing that will prefix this is /API, right? And then I want to set auth to false, so the user does not have to be authenticated to hit this endpoint. So I'm going to hit save, and that should restart our application. And if you actually go to the admin UI and go down to settings, roles, public, we will see where in users permissions we have this OTP option right here under the auth section. So our controller and route. So this is actually the route. If I should click on this is the cog, you'll see that this is the endpoint that we have to hit in order to send a request to the OTP endpoint in our app, and it's a post request. Cool. So I don't have to enable this because configuring setting auth to false in our route config will actually bypass authentication. Cool. So now to wire this up from the front end. So back in our Nuxt code base, the page that we want to look at now is the OTP page. And before we go to the OTP page, let me just register our middleware here on this login page. So I'm going to say middleware, set it to already logged in, and close that. So now on our one-time password page, I want to do the same thing. So define page meta. Oops. Middleware, registered already logged in middleware. And here we are going to make that call to log our user in, or to verify the one-time password, right? So we're going to say await use Strapi client, and the endpoint that I want to send the request to is auth/OTP, right? The second object is going to have the request configuration. So it's a post request, and the body should have the OTP in it. Yeah. So once this is sent over and the one-time password is correct, we should redirect the user to our dashboard. And before redirecting the user to the dashboard, we have to manually set the token and or user. So this is actually done. So we're going to say const res equal to whatever is returned from this call. So from this call, we're going to get this object. So JWT is going to be a string. So let's copy this, and we're going to add a type to this thing. Can we add the type here, or do we add it here? I think it's here. You can say JWT is a string. Yep. And now our res has a type. Cool. Now we're going to say if we don't get res, then we just return. We do nothing. All right. But if the res is there, we are going to save the token. So we're going to say use Strapi auth dot set token, and we're going to pass the token in. We're going to fetch the user. So I'm going to say await use Strapi auth dot fetch user, and then this fetch user function will actually set the Strapi user globally, because the Strapi user is being stored in with the use state composable from Nuxt, and that allows us to have global state in our application. So when this function is called, let me see if I can find the signature. Not a signature, the actual implementation. So the fetch user will actually set the user value. So after this user is fetched, then we can actually just redirect to the dashboard, right? So let's display that message and then redirect to the dashboard. And I think that's it for the OTP configuration functionality here. Let me go to the browser and refresh. And let's just try to put some rubbish in first and see if that will work. So we're getting the error back from our APIs just saying invalid credentials, because of course this OTP is not valid. Even if we try to put a different UUID in, once it can't find the UUID on a user, it should return that error message. But in the event that the value enter is found on a user, then it will return a success message and it will redirect us to our dashboard. And if I should check the DevTools, I'll see where my Strapi user is still here and still set. OTP is updated to null, and the last login value is actually updated to just no. So this is working as expected. And then of course, if you say, let's say you want to send another email to the user just to say something like, you know, your account was just logged into yada yada yada, you can do that right here. So send login notification. Let's copy back this thing. And can this be simplified? No, because you'd still have to be calling a function and passing in parameters. So it's fine. You can leave this as is. So we're going to send it to ctx.response.body.user.email. Just change this to login notification. Someone just logged into your account, and we can do the same here. So now if the user should log out, so let's say the person logged out, they're trying to log in again. I didn't update this text. The email is not sent, and the email isn't sent because of the logic that we have on the backend. So the logic is only send this email if the last login date was a day or more ago, right? So let me just go to the admin UI and update this user's last login date. Let's say it was last week Wednesday. Save that. I'm gonna try to log in again. So if I log in, yes, that new one-time password is sent. And then I can actually log in with this one-time password. Cannot read properties of undefined. That's an error that was just introduced. I'm assuming that this is where that error is coming from. Of course, we don't have the context being sent back anymore. So we have to actually use ctx. Instead of trying to send it from the response, we're going to send it directly from the user that we found earlier up here. So let's just save that. Server should restart. And then if we send that request again, now it's saying invalid credentials because most of the function was executed before that error was thrown. So let's do this again. We have to update the last login. Let's say it was last week. I'm gonna say John Doe test 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 at. Send that over. The email gets sent. We paste that in, and we're logged in. Now, to deal with the issue of, okay, I already logged in today and I want to log in again. As you can see, it's still redirecting us to this one-time password page, which we don't really want that. So we get this login notification, but we're not logged in. So let's fix that. So here, the logic is if, where is it? One-time password. Oh, it's in the login. It's in the callback. Okay. So if the should send email is true, then it's going to send the email and do all of this nice stuff and send this response back. So let me just put return here. Right? But if this is actually false, we just want to generate the we just want to send back the response from here instead, right? So if I should log in and I get back a response with the JWT in it, I actually want to just set that JWT and log my user in, right? So from the backend, the only thing that we had to do was add this return right here. And this will only update the object that's sent back if should send email is true, right? So we'll actually get back this message in our response, and we can use this to determine if we should send the user to the one-time password page or if we should just log them in from the login page. So on our login page, down here, we have to now get the response, right? And we want to say if res.jwt, we're going to perform these actions, else we'll do this. Cool. So if there's a JWT property on the response, then what we want to do is just like in the OTP page, we want to set the token and fetch the user and then redirect them to the dashboard. So I'm going to copy this logic and paste it here. So we're going to say if res.jwt, then we're going to set our token, fetch the user, redirect the user to the dashboard by reloading this page. And of course, we're getting this error right here because the type returned from this is not set. So I'm going to just set this to any for now. And that should get rid of that error, except it's not. Strange. But that's fine. This won't stop the code from being executed. So if I come to my login page now, let's go back to the login page, and I put in John Doe a test Now, because the last login time for this user in our UI is actually today, they should not be redirected to the one-time password page. So here we're actually telling this to set the token and set the user and send them to the dashboard if this JWT is returned. Yeah. If not, then we want to redirect them to the one-time password page. So let's click this, and we're still having that issue. So let's see what's the problem here. We do have JWT in the response. So I'm not sure why it redirected us to that page. Can I log res? Let's log res and see what we get. Oh, it's a promise. Forgot to await the call. Oh my. So the await should go here. And then this should work as expected. Let me go to the login page. Say John Doe again. And there you go. So if the user logged in recently, then we get sent to the dashboard immediately. And if not, let me just push this back just to test the other part. If not, then we get sent to the one-time password page, and of course the email is sent to us, and we can copy that, paste it in, and we're now logged in. So yeah, that's it, guys. Of course we got our login notification here. That's awesome too. If you have any questions around this thing or how it works, you can just shoot your question. The repository will be up on GitHub and the link in the description somewhere. Have a great day.